today. So I think we're going to make a quick little how-to on the clean air mod for the f4i, getting rid of this pair valve. So starting from the basics, tank and air box have been removed. This air line came off the bottom of the air box. We're going to plug that as part of the mod. We're going to be removing this pesky little guy, keeping the 3 hoses that are coming off of the valve cover. We're going to be adding a T, pulling out this, I think it's an 8mm, getting rid of that guy, and removing this whole junky little valve here, and making it so we don't worry about sucking air, or oil, sorry, back into the air box and locking up the motor. So I'm going to start with actually removing this hose, and we're going to bring it with us to the hardware store to make sure we get the right size, as it is the same size as the other 3 that we're going to be keeping. And there we have it. So squeeze the little clamp, pull it back, wiggle the little hose off of the fitting. Sometimes you got to give it some pressure, and we're going to bring it with us to the hardware store because it's the same size as the ones we're worried about. All right, we made it to the hardware store. They got brass, but I don't think we need brass. Let's go. Aha. Very close. Too big. I think what we need, that's gonna be the bad boy. Yep, little force, that's going in there. $5. I found more. And these ones are cheaper. I'm just gonna get one of each. Can't hurt having a spare. Magica TV, we are home from TSC. Found a couple little adapters that are going to, one of them's gonna do the job for us. I didn't decide, just slightly different sizes. It's gonna make things, give me some options, and I just wanted to see the differences and show you all. This one was $2, this one was $5, Canadian money. So I don't know what the big difference is. This one feels just as good. It says made in Canada on it. Anyhow, so like anything else I do, I like to kind of know why we're doing it or have a brief understanding. So the main reason we're doing this clean air mod is essentially to prevent hydrolock or oil getting into our intakes during a wheelie. So what happens is one of the 3 hoses we're dealing with is this crankcase vent hose. There goes my little puddle. So what can happen is in a wheelie, oil can drain up, come out this hose, get back into your intake system, and drain down through the air box into your intake, and you got a bunch of bad things happening. So that's the main reason why we do this. Now the reason this system is on the bike, basically essentially what it does is it draws unburnt vapors out of the crankcase, vents them into this pair valve section. This hose feeds clean air to the pair valve. When the computer tells the bike what's going on, it opens up the pair valve and introduces that air and unburnt fuel mixture down into the exhaust side of the intake, where it meets the hot gases and everything else and burns off. Good for emissions, bad for the oil path, and the way this system is going to work, it's essentially going to do the same thing. What we're going to be doing is venting the crankcase directly into the exhaust port reed valves. So what's going to happen now is the downforce, back pressure, vacuum pressure created by the exhaust leaving is going to draw the unburnt gases off of our cylinder, off of our crankcase, and just vent them out with the exhaust and pollute the earth. But it's going to eliminate us having to worry about oil coming up into the airbox and potentially getting in and wrecking our motor. If that were to happen, the oil is going to lead down into the exhaust side of the intake and just simply get burnt off in the exhaust or come out the pipe if you had enough coming through there, I guess. So, getting back to it real quick, the airbox was on here. We pulled this hose, it's going in the garbage. On the bottom of the airbox, we're going to be left with this air inlet and this air inlet. These are going to need to be blocked off. However you want to do it. Little rubber caps, some silicone, some tape, some rubber and a clamp, whatever you got to do. But we're going to block these off. So that's after, but just so you guys can see, those are the ones on the bottom of the airbox. So, moving back along, where we were at again before. We have our crankcase vent hose. We have our pair valve with the 2 hoses leading down to the dual, either side, I guess, 2 exhaust ports per side. So simply get your ratchet in the right direction. We're gonna get this guy out of here. So with the bolt removed, you can wiggle back the pair valve. That bolt is a great space for grounding stuff up front if you're doing headlights or installing an aftermarket panel or anything like that. Again, we're going to remove these 2 little clamps, just like we did on the other hose. We slide them off to the side. At this point, we should be able to wiggle these hoses off. And then sometimes things gotta fight with you. It's the real world. So if you find yourself not able to get these hoses off, just get a pick. I'll show you in a second, but if you have a pick, it's the easiest thing to get down in there just to break that seal. There's a lot of heat in here. Some of these things have been on here for 20 years, so something like that ran around inside the edge will help break it off. Worst case scenario, you could cut them here. It's nice to have a little bit more length, so I suggest not cutting it, but if you had to, I've seen guys cut it off and still make this work. So now that we got the solution going, and I had to get off camera there because I didn't know where my pick was. Now these are gonna wiggle out of here. So now we have that. So there's your pair valve. If you follow this little guy back, it's going to lead down to a socket underneath here. It's probably a little hard to see on camera. The little disconnect tab in there, you just lift the little tab and then this guy will unplug. There is your pair valve. I'm just looking at this. The last one I did didn't even have this piece left. I honestly think I'm gonna remove this piece and put it back on there because I like the way it held the throttle cables, and that little round rubber piece there will be good for holding up relay pack that I typically put in here. So anyways, there's your pair valve. Like I say, we don't need it. I'm not gonna throw it on the ground, just put it over there. So now we're left with the 3 hoses we need, and coincidentally enough, our T has 3 holes, 1 for each hose. 1 for each hose. So 2 of our lines still have our little clamps on there from before, the little ring clamps, spring clamps. And if we were smart, we left the other ones where we could see them. Aha! They're over here, just out of camera. So there's another one of those. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on there first because it's hard to put it on there after. Here we took our hose with us, and like I say, they were the same size, so this fits. Now with these ribs on there, it goes in and it doesn't really want to come right back out. Oh look, there's even the other one from this line still on there, so we don't even need this one. Anyways, so these little ribs, once it's in there, it's not really gonna want to come out. These are probably kind of redundant, but the reason I'm letting you know that is because if you just plug it in here up top, it'll work, and I think it'll fit back together. But your better option is to come underneath this cross member and make sure that you're not bending this hose. I can't tell if it's on camera, but this hose loops back down around by your coils. Make sure you're not kinking that up. But now we've been able to get these 3 right where they need to be with each other. So again, all 3 hose clamps are on there. I think I'm going to use this gray one just because it's the one that's in my hand. And give it a couple little twists, some wiggles. You can get that guy in there pretty far and pretty tight. Then, as logic would suggest, we got another one. Probably could have removed this stupid sticker, but this is a clapper. We're not that worried. So a little more wiggling and twisting, and that guy's gonna go in there. Hey, one more time. You could probably put some lube on here, would help. But essentially, there we have it. In a perfect world, I'd probably shorten these hoses, trim it up, tuck it back, and put it right on this bar. But it will fit just fine like this in here. We put our little ring clamps back up there. May need pliers. Sometimes the old fingers just don't got everything they need. But, you know, get those spring clamps back up there. All three of them. One here. All right, so spring clamps are on. Basically, you can tuck this guy up in here now. Clean air mod's finished. You don't got to worry about oil getting in the airbox. Don't forget to block off the 2 ports on the airbox. You can put stuff back together. May also want to consider a throttle body sync in the near future, just because you are changing this sort of the air fuel aspects of the bike. I'm not going to get into that nor pretend to totally understand it. So anyways, y'all, hope that helps. Let me know what you think. So I mentioned blocking these ports off. Figured I might as well do it a little closer up. Makes a little more sense. Finding something to go in these holes is a little bit tricky. I didn't make a trip to the hardware store. What I did find were these like rubber sort of protective ends for a piece of wire style furniture that I had in the garage. You might be able to get these bigger. I'm sure there's a few different ways you could block this off, but I wanted something kind of solid. I didn't want to put silicone or anything in there. I didn't want to put a crimped off hose on there, hose with a bolt. Yeah, there's a lot of little ways you could do it, but what I ended up finding was these. I got a couple of them, and these little Christmas tree guys that kind of fit right into there, make this expand a little bit. I was testing it a little bit before I brought out the phone. It turns out that even without the Christmas trees, these things are pretty tight to get down in here. I ended up using an Allen key with a nice round end on it to wiggle them down in here. You don't want to go through the bottom of the rubber, but simply wedging that Allen key down in there is really forcing these things in there. Yeah, it took pliers to get it out the time that I did it. You're not going to get that out of there even with your fingers. So I could put this Christmas tree in here, which I still might, but once you push that in there, it ain't coming out. I tried it with one over here, and yeah, it's not coming off. So, but anyways, this port and this port are the 2 that need to be blocked off in the clean air mod. Then you can reinstall your airbox, map sensor, all that stuff, and you're good to go. But yeah, I just wanted to show that again. So the 2 big ports of the guys you're blocking off. I use this little rubber cap guy. Do it however you want. Just do it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like I say, any ideas, tips, tricks, whatever, hit me up. Let me know. Something I need to tell you better, I'll try and figure it out. Or hit me up if you can teach me something, because I don't know everything. I'm just trying to help out a little.